So, there are things happening in your employees' lives right now that you know nothing about. Charlie very kindly introduced me. I'm Sarah, co-founder of Pace, and it's so great to see some familiar faces in the room today. Something that I'm going to start off sharing, that I've only told a couple of the people in my team, and now I'm telling a room full of people who I don't know very well, is that I'm currently pregnant with my second IVF baby. Getting here for me took quite a few years. Multiple surgeries, a diagnosis I only got because I happened to move to San Francisco. And if any of you know, California is the world's capital in fertility care. And serendipitously accessed private healthcare that introduced me to a specialist who was able to diagnose me like that. The kind of care I just didn't get in the UK. And she told me I had a congenital deformity that meant I was going to struggle to get pregnant and stay pregnant effectively. And here's what I know with absolute certainty. If I had been going through any of that at my previous employer, I would never have said a word. Not to my boss, not to my manager, not to my director, and certainly not to HR. I probably would have taken holiday. I would have put a little fake smile on my face and turned up to work. And those of you who know me will know I would have done a half-assed job and done work I wasn't particularly proud of. But I would have powered through, and at some point I probably would have left, and I would never have shared why. And I guess I want to ask you, how many people in your business right now are doing exactly the same thing? I want to be really, really clear, that's my personal story, but I'm not here to talk about fertility. Because how many of you have someone in your team right now dealing with something in their personal life that has nothing to do with work and everything to do with how they're showing up for you? It could be perimenopause that's causing someone's concentration to be absolutely shot and they're struggling and embarrassed to share that information. It could be someone quietly caring for an elderly parent and therefore struggling to hit their targets. It could even be someone training for an ultramarathon, a real passion project, an athletic goal they've set themselves, or potentially a really difficult breakup or messy divorce. Trust me, they're all equally mind-consuming, and these issues leave employees feeling like their personal life is a source of shame rather than they can show up to work being proud of. The details might be different, but the impact on performance is identical. The question is, do people trust their managers and the culture they work in to be 100% themselves? Or are they performing a version of themselves that's holding something back? These issues affect everybody, and the impact shows up in your business whether you see it or not. And I'm going to go into what the data tells us. And often when I say I'm going to talk about employee engagement and well-being, people think I'm going to be very, very soft and cuddly and talk about emotions and feelings. But this isn't soft stuff. This is your bottom line. And I could talk stats until the cows come home. But 10% of UK employees are actively engaged at work. So the UK ranks 33 out of 38 European countries. 51 billion is lost by UK employers to poor mental health. And shockingly, 24 billion of that figure is presenteeism. So people who are showing up to work but just not doing a very good job. And for every £1 employers spend on mental health, they see a £4.70 return. So the question isn't whether you can afford to invest in your people's well-being, the question is whether you can afford not to. One thing I know from speaking to many of you and to speaking with a lot of the leaders we work with is that most employers do want to do the right thing, but the gap between intention and action is where they struggle. Now, the perks trap. The instinct when we talk about well-being and benefits and things like that is to reach for the perks budget. Things like fruit bowls, gym memberships, drinks after work. The ping pong table that we've got a snooker table outside, barely ever used. And I genuinely mean this. We've got breakfast here today. I'm not against free snacks. But here's what I know from over a decade in this industry. Perks are very, very visible, but a culture of well-being is felt by your team. Your employees do know the difference, and you can't buy psychological safety with any kind of delivery voucher. 89% of employees would only consider working for an employer that prioritizes well-being. that ranks equal to salary. The leaders spending money on perks and seeing no return, it's not that wellbeing investment doesn't work, it's just that investment is going to the wrong place. Think about the last time your organisation went through real change. It could have been a restructure, a new system, a new way of working, or a new process you wanted to get started. And ask yourself honestly, who in your team was really on board with that change with you, or who was just kind of compliant, going through the motions, but not really bought in and not delivering at their best. You've just heard from Paul and Rachel, people far more intelligent than me, about the legislative changes that are coming your way. And here's the reality. Change, even if it's positive change, creates uncertainty. And uncertainty disengages people. When employees feel unheard during periods of change, it's not dramatic. They don't storm out. They just quietly stop bringing their best. And you often don't notice until it's too late. Now, this is my favourite one. 70% of UK employees say their manager has more impact on their mental health than their therapist or doctor. So that's equal to their partner. And sit with that for a second. Your employees are telling us, as their manager shapes their manager shapes their mental health just as much as their partner does. So what kind of environment are we creating every single day for our teams? And we also see this in Pace's own client employee engagement data. Across the organisations we work with, the companies with the highest overall engagement survey scores are consistently the same ones where employees feel most trusted by their line manager. It's not the only factor, but it's the most predictable and consistent indicator that we have. Pace HR's client data is also really not ambiguous on this point, where employees feel safe to talk to their manager about their mental health, engagement is always higher. I can look for those questions in our survey data and tell you that they're going to have a higher than average score across the groups that we've surveyed. And it's not just in the wellbeing scores, it's across the board of all the categories we look for. Psychological safety in of itself isn't a category, it's the foundation of what we provide our teams. So what do we actually do with all that information? Well, we start by listening and listening properly. And I've spent over a decade surveying companies on employee engagement. Some of you will know that, some of you will have taken part. And I've seen what works and I've seen what doesn't. The pattern I see over and over again is leaders making culture decisions based on an assumption. And there's a gap between what leaders think is happening in their business and what their employees are actually experiencing. And that gap is where employee engagement essentially dies. At Pace, we've built an employee engagement survey designed specifically for this. It's not a tick box annual exercise, but it's something that gives you real actionable insights into how your people are doing, what their expectations are, and where are the gaps. And then it gives us the insight to tell us what to actually do about it. You measure what matters, you share the results honestly, and you take visible action. And that cycle of listen, share, act is what builds the kind of culture where people feel safe enough to do their best work. It's essentially about doing a lot more than just vibes and guessing how people are thinking and feeling. This is something I've been really passionate about for 15 years, and now it's a product that we've built from our experience. Alongside Charlie, I built Pace's culture around what was important to me and what I needed to feel safe to do my best work. And I built it because I lived the alternative. I didn't like it too much. And now I've built this tool alongside my team so that we can all do the same thing, essentially, and get the right information. Your teams and the employees in your teams are dealing with things you just don't know about. And the question is whether you can afford to ignore that.